decision making. Let's talk about this today. How many of us confuse taking some time with thoughtful decision making? That's a good thing. With procrastination, and that's frequently not a good thing. They're not the same. Whether it's a big decision like should I pop the question? Should we buy this house? Should we open up a new location for our business? Big step. Or the more routine and mundane, the daily grind of decisions. We're faced with these all of the time. How we handle the stress of decision making can have a great effect on our state of good mental health and well-being, or the opposite, which I think is a great point to join up with our Dr. John Braccio, PhD, Regional Psychological Services, East Lansing, and on with the web at drjohnb.com for the podcast. This is an easy decision for me to make. Good morning, sir. Welcome back.
Well, good morning to you, David. Welcome back to you, I might add. It's so good to talk to you.
Indeed. Likewise.
I think a few things here. Decision-making, really in the simplest of lives or those in the highest levels of government or industry, can be painful and produce great stress. And countless books, speeches, articles that pertain to effective decision-making continue to occur all the time. Now, I think there's some basic suggestions in such a complicated form of decision-making to reduce the stress and pain. And I think you kind of hit on this at the beginning. Decision-making is something that happens all the time. And for those that have trouble distinguishing between important and unimportant, then this can be a very, very difficult thing. The first thing you have to do is identify the problem. Then you do have to know the difference between important and non-important. And then you have to search for alternatives to solve the problems. Then you have to determine, is this decision reversible or irreversible? That becomes very important, because if it's irreversible, you better certainly make sure that it's something you can live with. And then I think you want to consult with others in terms as needed if this occurs. You want to play the devil's advocate on your decision. A lot of people really don't do that. You have to take a look and say, okay, that's a bad idea, that won't work, even though you're talking about a decision that you really want to make. And I think there are times you really have to think about decisions if they're really important and you're really not quite sure. We're talking about important, not unimportant. And this is when the old proverb comes in, look before you leap. Now, when time is critical and a decision must be made, you have to make it. You can't second-guess yourself, and then you have to move forward. And then you kind of use another old proverb, strike while the iron is hot. So I think the intent, really, what we're talking about here is just trying to help people make decisions. And so often I work with people, talk to people that really can't distinguish between what's really important and not important. It leads to procrastination. It leads to a lot of stress. It leads to conflicts in life. And it leads to really not getting things done. So really, they seem like simple things, but if you talk to anybody, just go anywhere. You can go to a grocery store, or you can talk to someone on the street. You can be anywhere, and you'll find that decision-making is a very, very difficult thing for them, in spite of how simple it seems if you just lay out some key points to make good decisions. But people just have a lot of trouble, so they really have to work on it.
The clients you work with, though, who have trouble, why is it so paralyzing for some people? Are there common threads there that you see?
I think there are people that just cannot distinguish between important and unimportant. It's not just because a person has ADD, attention deficit disorder. There are people that really cannot distinguish. They may have to, let's say, they're going to work, and there are 5 things they're working on, but 1 or 2 are really critical. They have problems at work because they can't distinguish. They'll be working on the thing that's less important, or they'll be working on a few things and not the key one. They have trouble distinguishing between what's important and what's really not important. And this happens through many phases, the way people handle their money, the way people handle relationships. And so it's really a key thing. You don't have to read a book by David Kahneman in terms of Thinking First and Slow, which is really a great traditional book, 10 years old now, about thinking, about decision making. How do people make decisions? But the main thing is you first define it. You then look into what is important, what isn't important. Then you have to come up with alternatives, sort out what you're going to do, and then you play devil's advocate. Just points that I had really made. Then you make a decision to move. And if you, a lot of times people are afraid to make decisions because they think they're going to make a mistake. What they don't realize is the biggest mistake is not making a decision. So it is really
Yeah.
well, that's really true.
Again, that's the paralyzing moment
yes.
where, and there was an old quote from someplace. It may have been on a Charlie Brown comic. Who knows? The doctor is in. But it's, I don't mean to belittle, but it's the Lucy on psychiatric help, 5 cents. But the old quote was not to decide, is to decide.
Yes,
You've made a decision to put something off, not even think about it, and that already has set you up on quicksand. So, you make a good point. I love the one here that you said something about play the devil's advocate. I had somebody on social media post me up last week and said, at my company, the devil's advocate person is consistently dragging us down. It's making us he makes it not possible for us to be nimble and quick. And I said, but sometimes nimble and quick doesn't turn out to be nimble or quick, and it can cost you a lot of money. What's wrong with hearing another alternative? If you're going to make the decision, you make it, but get the info first. What's wrong with that? Well, I wonder if people have the time to think about that now. Or they think they don't, but they should. You know what I mean?
Well, I think people have to. You're going to find there is a line. It's the old Aristotle's summum bonum. You have to make good decisions. You do have to think about them. You need intuition, obviously. Intuition is something that you'll find successful people have. They size up a situation quickly, and they're able to move forward with a decision. On the other hand, you have to have some common sense, too, and you need to sit back and look at the situation. Everything is not critical. You don't get into that critical moment. When that moment comes, you have to be willing to take the move. Another proverb: he who hesitates is lost.
Right.
There are times.
True.
I mean, these old proverbs, believe it or not, can be helpful. But see, even as we're talking here, you can see it gets a little confusing too in terms of what's important, what's not important. When do you move? When do you not move? I will say this: that in my work in living a lifetime, actually, as you have, I think you will see that people that don't make decisions tend to be far more upset in a lifetime than those that do make decisions, except for those that obviously make really bad decisions. But as a whole, sitting back, looking at the world go by, as you're indecisive, it was kind of Lincoln about General McClellan. He said he had the best trained army that didn't fight. There are times you have to be willing. And of course, you got General Grant, who didn't know how to fight. I might have General Sherman. So when you look at it, it's often making decisions is critical. But first is being able to distinguish what is important and what not is important. And it sounds simple, but Dave, it's very difficult. People do have to really sit back, even daily, determine what's important today, what is not important today, set up what they're going to do, and move forward. That's really good decision making.
It's
hard for many people to do.
Talk about a great example. You just have General McClellan, somebody who was paralyzed, but the inability to make a decision on what to do at the crucial moment, and it left him at the crucial moment, and it cost him. By the way, Lincoln's note back was pretty funny. He said, General, if you're not going to use your army, I should like to borrow it for a period of time, which was quite a brilliant thing for the president to say there, and quite prophetic about what was to come. Decision-making, knowing what the small and mundane consists of, knowing what the big decisions are, maybe being quicker on the former and more slow to decide, and methodical and thoughtful about the latter. These are things that can ease your stress when you do them in the proper combination. And finding that proper combination is part of the goal for all of us on a daily basis. You'll find this and more at drjohnb.com, this podcast, and many, many others. This will be there soon. You go to drjohnb.com, and there are many ways to get better mental health, and listen to the doc there as well. Regional Psychological Services. It's always good to talk to you, my friend, after a week away. Good for the soul.
Same to you, and you needed it. And Rich did a great job when you were gone.
Good to hear. I always knew. I knew that was going to be the case of the pro that he is, and you as well. We'll talk to you again soon. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. We'll be back in a moment on the Morning Wake Up, 1320 WILS.